Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 14 2016 NFL predictions. Well, this week for the Fanatic, it was a mixed bag of results for both against the spread and straight up picks. Against the spread, I went 5-9, and straight up, I flipped it and went 9-5. So now overall for the year, against the spread, now I've dropped to 84, 92, and 7, which is about 48%. So, after having such a great 3 to 4 week stretch where I at least was 500 or better, the last couple of weeks with the against the spread picks have turned out like my start to against spread picking. So, hopefully with 4 weeks left, 8 games to make up, hopefully I can flip that to at least a 500 record against the spread by the end of the year. And straight up, I'm continuing to move up pretty well, even though this week standing at 115, 74, and 2 straight up. I didn't move that much by percentage, but still at about 61%, that's pretty good with 4 weeks to go. If I can string 4 really good weeks together, that 62, 63% range is still well possible. But what a wild week in the NFL. A lot of the games that I got wrong weren't even close. The Miami-Baltimore game, I'm happy as a Ravens fan, and I will admit I was totally wrong about the game. The Dolphins had their worst game since the game against Cincinnati. It was their first loss in 6 games. We put up 38 points. That was a season high, and Joe Flacco threw for a career high in yards. He also threw for 4 touchdowns, which was the first time he did that since 2014 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I feel like we made a statement victory saying that our 7-5 record is a better 7-5 than what people might have thought just with our schedule. Because beating a streaking Miami team that had been playing really efficient football is a quality victory. I don't think Miami is that bad because they played too much good football to say that. I just think as soon as they got punching them out by our offense, they just couldn't respond. And I think in a game at home against an Arizona team that they got a big one too, beating the Redskins 31-23. I think they're going to be more motivated, and they're playing a team that, even though they have some confidence, they've shown that they can kind of play like Miami, and that they have all the talent, and they have the formula to win, they just can't execute it. And to me, that game is going to be basically the aspect of who can execute their game plan better. So a couple other little tidbits. I want to congratulate the Dallas Cowboys for clinching the first playoff spot for the year, and for having the best record and winning their 11th straight game against the Minnesota Vikings. Dallas had their worst offensive performance of the year and was still able to find a way to win. I congratulate them on that because that shows the sign of a great team that you can still be at your worst at one point and still find a way to win. So congratulate to Dallas there. Minnesota, they're having a lot of offensive problems. When your defense shuts down the number one offense or one of the best offenses to their lowest points and you can't surpass that, and it was 15 points. I know a lot of people have been saying about that game, well, Bradford got grabbed by the face mask. And that is true. But what a lot of people are forgetting to just ignore is that T.J. Clemmings, their left tackle, who had his worst career game, also false started. And that's clearly seen in the play. So that should have been offsetting penalties. And the Vikings should have had another opportunity from the 7 to try to get it in. That's just my opinion on that. So congratulations to Dallas on that one. And for San Fran, just quickly, that was just an abysmal game against Chicago. Chicago looked like world beaters against the Niners, and that's saying something, especially with Matt Barkley being a quarterback. Matt Barkley didn't even throw a touchdown. I think he threw for under 200 yards, but he just looks much more competent and efficient compared to the Niners. And just for the Niners' sake, congratulations. You're probably the number 2 overall pick, which is amazing because the Browns will beat you. And honestly, after what I saw on Sunday, I actually have more respect for the Cleveland Browns as a whole unit than the Niners. Because at least the Browns have had, glimpses of consistency. The Niners had that one, the one win that the Browns don't. But after that shutout, they've looked nothing of the sort since. So those are my thoughts on this week. But time for the picks. There are no more buys this week. 64 games left. It's exciting that there's no buys, so there's a full slate, so there's a lot of opportunities to get victories. But time for my picks. So this Thursday, when the 10-2 Oakland Raiders go to the 9-3 Kansas City Chiefs. The Oakland Raiders are 3-point underdogs in this game. I like Oakland +3, but I'm going to take Kansas City straight up. And in the next game, when the 7-5 Pittsburgh Steelers go to the 6-6 Buffalo Bills, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 2-point favorites in this game. I like Pittsburgh -2 and straight up. Then the next game, when the 8-4 Denver Broncos go to the 6-6 Tennessee Titans, the Denver Broncos and Tennessee Titans, I haven't seen the spread on this game. So from what I've seen, this is a pick'em. So I'm going to take the Denver Broncos in a pick'em to beat the Titans. And I think I'm going to take Denver straight up. And in the next game, when the 5-7 New Orleans Saints go to the 7-5 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 3-point favorites in this game. I like Tampa Bay -3. Tampa Bay straight up. And in the next game, when the 6-5-1 Washington Redskins go to the 5-7 Philadelphia Eagles, the Washington Redskins are 1-point favorites in this game. I like Washington -1. Washington straight up. And in the next game, when the 5-6-1 Arizona Cardinals go to the 7-5 Miami Dolphins, the Arizona Cardinals are 2.5-point favorites in this game. I like Arizona -2.5 and Arizona straight up. And in the next game, when the 5-7 San Diego Chargers go to the 4-8 Carolina Panthers, the Carolina Panthers are 3.5-point favorites in this game. I actually like San Diego +3.5 and San Diego straight up. And then the next game, when the 4-7-1 Cincinnati Bengals go to the 0-12 Cleveland Browns, the Cincinnati Bengals are 4.5-point favorites in this game. I like Cincinnati -4.5 and Cincinnati straight up. And in the next game, when the 3-9 Chicago Bears go to the 8-4 Detroit Lions, the Detroit Lions are 7.5-point favorites in this game. I like Detroit straight up, but I'm going to take Chicago +7.5. And then the next game, when the 6-6 Houston Texans go to the 5-7 or 6-6 Indianapolis Colts, the Indianapolis Colts are 4.5-point favorites in this game. I like Indianapolis -4.5 and Indianapolis straight up. And in the next game, when the 6-6 Minnesota Vikings go to the 2-10 Jacksonville Jaguars, the Minnesota Vikings are 3-point favorites in this game. I like Minnesota -3, Minnesota straight up. And in the next game, when the 3-9 or 4-8 New York Jets go to the 1-11 San Francisco 49ers, the Jets are 1-point favorites in this game. I like the New York Jets -1, the New York Jets straight up. And in the next game, when the 7-5 Atlanta Falcons go to the 4-8 LA Rams, the Atlanta Falcons are 5-point favorites in this game. I like Atlanta -5 and Atlanta straight up. And in the next game, when the 8-3-1 Seattle Seahawks go to the 6-6 Green Bay Packers, the Seattle Seahawks are 2.5-point favorites in this game. I like Seattle -2.5 and Seattle straight up. And then in the Sunday night game, when the 11-1 Dallas Cowboys go to the 8-4 New York Giants, the Dallas Cowboys are 3-point favorites in this game. I like Dallas -3 and Dallas straight up. And then the Monday night game, when the 7-5 Baltimore Ravens go to the 10-2 New England Patriots, the New England Patriots are 8-point favorites in this game. I like Baltimore +8, but I'm going to take the New England Patriots straight up. All right, so time for my thoughts on each game. The Raiders at the Chiefs. When you look at this game, I'm going to congratulate Derek Carr. He accomplished his 10th fourth-quarter comeback since last year. That is the most in the NFL. And for the Raiders, this is their first 10-win season since 2002, and it's the first time they've won 6 straight games since 2000. This Oakland offense, it was spectacular and explosive. In a span of only 11 minutes, and 42 seconds, the Oakland Raiders scored 29 unanswered points in the final 29 points in the game. In that span, Latavius Murray became the third running back in Oakland history with 10-plus rushing touchdowns, joining Hall of Famer Marcus Allen. And I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer, but I'll have to look. The other running back's name was Peter Banasak, is the only Raiders with 10-plus rushing touchdowns in a single season. It's also the first time since 1963 the Raiders have trailed by 15-plus points in the second half, and they still were able to win the game. A lot's been said about the Oakland defense, and through the first half, it was absolutely atrocious. Through the first half and a little bit in the third quarter. Through the game, until 9 minutes and 4 seconds left in the third quarter, the Buffalo Bills had gained 299 yards of total offense. In the final 21 minutes and 56 seconds of the game, the Buffalo Bills only was able to manage 63 total yards. So there's a part of you with how that defense is where they show you the flaw and the inability to stop anybody at any time during a game. But then through the second half, which is what I just mentioned, they show that potential with all that talent to be able to make plays and to show that they can be a quality defense that can carry this team to a Super Bowl. Again, they're number 5 offense in points per game, and they're number 3 offense in yards. Where Oakland is explosive, flashy, lightning, quick, swagger, fun. Kansas City, gritty, tough, consistent, dry, boring to a lot of people. But they are just a more complete team. And when you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, 6 victories when they have trailed by at least 1 touchdown. That's the most in the NFL. Eric Berry converted the first game-winning 2-point conversion interception while trailing in NFL history. And the Kansas City Chiefs, I believe, are now tied with the Vikings for scoring with 6 non-offensive touchdowns, and they've scored in the most ways possible. With a rushing touchdown, a receiving touchdown, they've scored on the safety, they've scored on a punt return touchdown, and they've scored on a pick 6, and they've scored on a fake punt. And to me, when you look at the Chiefs, they're really not that spectacular. But they have 2 important stats for them that matter. Even though, again, they're 22nd in yards, 21st in passing yards, 22nd in passing TDs, 25th in rushing yards. They force the most turnovers in the league. They score the 15th most points in the league, and they allow the 8th fewest. So what that tells you is that really the stats, for those you can try to gain yardage. But it really, at the end of the day, that's not really going to change things. It's how many opportunities do you get? Will you get extra opportunities? Can you capitalize on those opportunities? And can you stop other people from scoring? And the Chiefs are one of the better teams, or they have a quality enough offense and defense to do that. And the Chiefs have won 7 straight in division. I love this game because this is the classic battle, just like last time, of the consistent, steady, blue-collar, gritty, tough, body shots type of team in Kansas City compared to the knockout power and explosiveness that the Oakland Raiders have. And I'm taking Kansas City just because, again, I was wrong the last time. They made the Raiders look their worst they had the entire year. They only scored 10 points. The longest play in that game was only 24 yards. And I think with what Kansas City has going for them, they're at home. They have the motivation of they beat Atlanta, which Oakland could not, and they have the win already over them in Oakland. With it being a short week, they get to have the home field advantage. They're getting possibly Jeremy Maclin back. They already have all this talent. I just think Kansas City is going to execute another solid game plan. And for Derek Carr going into the cold, and again, he's in California, that's going to be a big difference in why I believe Kansas City wins this game. But I'd be surprised if Oakland wins. No, they're one of 3 undefeated teams on the road with the Cowboys and the Patriots. So you could argue they're better on the road, or they have been this year, and they feel more comfortable on it. But just playing in Arrowhead Stadium, it's one of the hardest places to play. And I just think, again, where Kansas City, they're going to be used to that kind of environment. I don't think Oakland will be. And with how what Derek Carr is, he hasn't beaten them in Kansas City in his career, and he hasn't really played that well in the 2 shots he's been there. So it's going to be a really good game. It's, to me, the game of the week, or one of the 3 games of the week I'm really excited for. But I'm going to take Oakland +3 because I'll give Oakland credit on the road. But I'm taking Kansas City straight up because I feel like Kansas City is going to play more of a complete game and a more consistent game than Oakland. Even if their offense can score a little bit, I think that Kansas City's whole team will be able to just put more points on that defense to get this victory and take first place in the AFC West. So that's why I got Oakland +3 and Kansas City straight up. Next game, Steelers over Bills. I'm going to congratulate Darius Green, who had a career high in receiving yards of 118, and he scored his first touchdown since Week 7 of last year. And the Pittsburgh Steelers got a very impressive and decisive victory over a New York Giant team that had won 6 straight games themselves. It was, for Pittsburgh, their defense has turned it around tremendously over this 3-game winning streak. During their 4-game losing streak, their defense averaged 25.8 points per game. During this 3-game winning streak, their defense has cut that by over 15, and they're averaging 10 points per game on defense. And this is the first time for the Steelers they've forced 2+ turnovers in 3 straight games since weeks 13 through 15 of last year. And you look at how Le'Veon Bell did. He had a 100-yard game. Ben Roethlisberger threw for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. Antonio Brown caught another big touchdown. He made some big, time plays when he needed to. So this team is getting hot right at the right time. And I think, again, they have the faster track to getting to the AFC North. And when they're playing a Buffalo team that, in Rex Ryan's tenure in the last 2 years, he is 4-10 against winning teams as the Bills head coach. Though it will be a very tough test for Pittsburgh. They're playing the number 1 running game in the NFL, led by one of the best rushers in LaShawn McCoy, who leads the league in terms of yards per rush at 5.5 yards per attempt. And Tyrod Taylor, since week 7, he's provided to be a much bigger running threat. Here's a little fun stat. He actually has 2 more rushing touchdowns compared to passing touchdowns over the last 6 weeks. He has 5 rushing touchdowns compared to only 3 passing touchdowns. Again, you can consider that an indictment against Tyrod because, again, that's showing he's more of a runner than a thrower. But I'm going to, say that, hey, that's a credit to Tyrod for the Rex Ryan ground and pound system, that he can use his legs to help be an extension of that. When you look at this game, I think Buffalo, they can provide something. They can provide, with that running game. And again, when Pittsburgh gets a big victory this year, it's always seemed that they always tend to, play to their competition or underperform. So I would tell Pittsburgh not to sleep on Buffalo, because after they whipped the Chiefs, they went to Miami and got beat 30-15 the week after. So Pittsburgh's kind of always had the ability to always lay an egg against a lesser team, but just with how Pittsburgh is, I think that offense is too high-powered that even if the Bills can try to run, I think Pittsburgh has a better run defense that they can shut that down. And if they just double-team Sammy Watkins, that's essentially what the Bills have at receiving threat right now. And I think with what Pittsburgh has, especially with how they like the blitz, Ben Roethlisberger has a plenty good enough offensive line to protect him against the blitz. And with the weapons he has, he'll be able to make big plays and big throws to all his receivers to win this game for Buffalo. And also for Pittsburgh, they've won 9 of the last 10 games against the Bills. So Pittsburgh's routinely beat this team. And just about how these two teams are, I'm not going to go against them in this spot. So that's like Pittsburgh -2 and Pittsburgh straight up. Next game, Broncos over Titans. This was really tough because with the injury to Trevor Siemian, I don't know if he is going to play. And I am going to make this pick assuming that he is going to. When you look at Denver, I want to congratulate Paxton Lynch. First career win as a starting quarterback against the Jacksonville Jaguars. For Jacksonville, that should be a bit of a shame that you just lost to a rookie that had been, only in his second start. And also, they got their 4th defensive touchdown, which ties them with the Chiefs and Chargers, their AFC West rivals, for the most defensive touchdowns in the NFL this year. When you look at the Denver Broncos as well, they've had 8 defensive touchdowns overall since last year. That's the most in the NFL. And Denver's kind of like Kansas City in this regard, where they don't really generate a lot of yards. Look, they're actually worse than Kansas City. They're 27th in passing yards, 23rd in rushing yards. Yeah, and 24th against stopping the run. So because their run defense is not very that good. But they're 13th in points scored. So it's kind of like Kansas City, where they don't really move the ball that often, but that's a credit to their defense and their special teams for putting them in positions to have short fields to not have to move in that regard. When you look at the Broncos, though, they're playing a Titan team that's coming off their bye. Marcus Mariota has a Titans franchise record of 8 straight games with 2+ passing touchdowns. And they also have the 3rd best running offense in the NFL. So the Titans can provide a balance against a Denver team that, should be careful because you have weapons like Tajay Sharp, Kendall Wright, Delaney Walker, DeMarco Murray, Derrick Henry. They have enough competent weapons on offense to give the Broncos a bit of trouble. And also Marcus Mariota, he actually has the 4th most passing touchdowns in the league. Only, I believe, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan, and Drew Brees have more passing touchdowns than Marcus Mariota does. But for the Titans, though, this has been a weird stretch for them. Even though they're 500, they've been 500 their last 6 games. They've split their last 6 games with a 3-3 record. And when Tennessee commits an offensive turnover, they're 2-5 in those games. And just with how this defense is, I think with Marcus Mariota, I think he'll commit a turnover against this Denver defense, this no-fly zone that they are so proud of to have. And just with Marcus Mariota, he's also thrown, I believe, he's had 4 turnover touchdowns, which I believe leads the league in that stat. So I feel like with that opportunity, I think Denver's defense will get them this victory. Because I think Paxton Lynch against this Titans defense, which is not very good, they're, I think, about 22nd in terms of points per game, and they're even worse than that in terms of yards per game given up. So Paxton Lynch or Simeon will have a good matchup to play against this Titans defense. And I just think with how Mariota and this team is, I think this Denver defense will get a turnover on Mariota. They've only gone, I think, 1 game without causing a turnover over the last, 4 or 5. And I just think with that, Denver gets this victory. If Trevor Simeon's playing, I feel a lot more confident about it. Paxton Lynch, it's got about a 51-49 kind of feeling to me. But I'm going to take Denver just because I feel like they have a much better defense. I think Mariota's 1 or 2 mistakes are going to be the difference in getting this Broncos victory that the Broncos desperately need to keep pace in the AFC West race and the wild card race. But thankfully it's a pick'em, so I don't have to worry about having to go against the spread. So I'll take Denver both ways because of that. So that's why I like Denver against the spread straight up. Next game, New Orleans and Tampa Bay. Drew Brees had a 60-game streak where he had a passing touchdown at home that was snapped yesterday, where I believe he only had no touchdowns and 3 interceptions. And actually, Drew Brees threw 3 interceptions for the first time since Week 17 of 2014, and it was the first time he had thrown 3+ interceptions and had lost a game since Week 14 of 2012. That was the infamous game where he threw 5 interceptions in the same game against the Atlanta Falcons. One thing, though, I have noticed about New Orleans is for years with Drew Brees, they had a unbelievable canny environment feel in the Superdome. But over the last 3 seasons, that allure and that aura of, the invincibility or near invincibility in the Superdome has gone away. From 2009 to 2013, in 24 games, the Saints were 19-5 in 24 home games. Now, over the last 3 years, or from 2014 to now, they are 10-23. So this is not very good, and I'm just not sold on it. I think it's very shaky. From that, and let me phrase it, this is 10-23 in the last 3 years since Sean Payton's been there. I discounted 2012. So this Saints team at home is clearly not the Saints team that we had known while the Saints were at their best during that 4-year run. And for the Saints, this is an awkward aspect where they score the second most points on offense, but they give up the second most points on defense. So essentially with that, the offense and defense cancel out, and you always hate that because that's why you feel bad for Drew Brees, that he has to basically throw this team to victories, and because he knows that his defense in shootouts can't hold up. And they're playing a Tampa team right now that is on a roll. They've won 4 straight games for the first time since 2012. They're also 5-1 on the road this year and 2-4 at home. So the Saints may have a little bit of a better opportunity, just because, again, Tampa's at home and they've only won 2 games at home. And they've forced 2+ turnovers on defensive for the last 7 games. And I believe in those games, or in most of those, they've won those games. Tampa Bay's defense during this 4-game stretch have given up 13.3 points per game. And this has been against quality teams, against the Kansas Cities, against the Seattles, and against the San Diegos, and against, Chicago. Okay, I'll discount Chicago. But against 4 decent teams. And when you look at Mike Evans, he's been a one-man show. He's become a Jarvis Landry and A.J. Green type of receiver. With Vincent Jackson going down, Mike Evans has double the receiving yards of every other Bucs receiver on that team. Also, I do want to say real quickly, Shout out to Cecil Shorts. I hope he gets well soon. He suffered a dislocated knee, torn ACL, MCL, and PCL. His career might be over, but I wish him the best recovery for the rest of the year because that is a gruesome injury to have to go through. Though Tampa Bay has lost 7 of the last 8 games against New Orleans, I just think it's an aspect where Tampa Bay has shown over the last several weeks they're a consistent team. I think they're better than Atlanta on face value, just from what I've seen over the last few weeks, because their defense plays a lot more consistently, and Jameis Winston, when you need him most, he can come through in the fourth quarter, which is huge, to make the playoffs in this division race. I think New Orleans can put up points on this Tampa defense, because, again, they have the second best offense, so they can put up points against anybody. But I think Jameis Winston, knowing that he has beaten this team before in big situations, even though I believe he lost the game in Tampa last year, I think with this team and with how they're playing, I think Tampa, I have to go with the momentum here. Tampa has a better running game, they have a much better defense, and I just wish Jameis Winston being able to make throws, being able to make plays with his arm to get to lead and push his team to a victory over a same team that, while they've had their moments and they've had their opportunities to win games, they just haven't been able to do it. And they just kind of seem like they've given up hope for this year after the performance they had against Detroit, where they didn't even look close. So that's what I like Tampa Bay -3 and Tampa Bay straight up. Next game, Redskins over Eagles. Carson Wentz has hit the rookie wall really hard. He threw the ball 60 times. I think for the Eagles, that is a rookie record for the most passing attempts in one single game. And just when you watched him throw, it was pretty awful. I understand, look, they didn't have Lane Johnson who's suspended. Their backup left tackle was out with an injury. Jordan Matthews didn't play. Ryan Matthews didn't play. They had a lot of injuries and a lot of problems. But still, they were playing a defense in Cincy that's given up 120.5 yards per game on the ground. That was the 5th worst in the NFL. Philadelphia ran for a measly total of 33 yards. You would think, even with that offensive line, what they have, still with Peters and Kelsey and Brandon Brooks, you would think that they would have a little bit of a better running output than that. And for Carson Wentz, he has regressed tremendously. The first 3 games, he completed 64.7% of his passes, 769 yards, threw for 5 touchdowns and no interceptions. The last 8 games, while they've been 2-6, 63.7% completion percentage, 2,132 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. And he threw 3, and it should have been really 6 against the Bengals. But I think the worst part is that the balls were going everywhere. There were some ridiculously wide open Eagles wide receivers that he just overthrew by a mile. And for the Eagles defense, on the first 6 drives of the Bengals, they scored points. And it was the most points allowed by the Eagles defense all year. So I feel like this team, they've given up hope for this year, just looking at their output against a Bengal team that did not have A.J. Green, did not have Giovanni Bernard, and that was really just playing just for pride. And to get smoked like that just kind of showed that the Eagles and the Bengals are both kind of on the same level at this point, of where they're just going to play games now just to gain experience, and if wins happen, they happen. If they lose, they're just losses at this point. So it was a very all-around, very poor game by the Philadelphia Eagles team. And for the Redskins, they're coming off a reeling aspect too. The Redskins have lost back-to-back games for the first time since week 1 and 2 of this year, and the Redskins defense has given up 30-plus points in back-to-back games for the first time since week 6 and 7 of last year. And when you look at Washington, and when I saw them play against Arizona, I'll say it again, the Washington Redskins look like the Arizona Cardinals. In the sense of now you kind of just see where in a lot of their games you kind of saw that, at the end of the game, Kirk Cousins and them, they had all the talent, but they just weren't able to put it together. And again, I think it was because of the turnovers, the big fumble that Arizona was able to capitalize on. They also couldn't stop David Johnson for no apparent reason, but nobody's been able to do that, so I'll give them a little bit of pass on that. Just when you looked at Washington, it was just where, at the end of the day, their defense had some big penalties at the end, and they just couldn't make the big plays that Arizona could. And that was the difference, especially that touchdown pass to J.J. Nelson. That sealed it for the Arizona Cardinals, in my opinion. And even though, again, the Redskins, they have a very good offense. They're 9th in points and 2nd in total yards per game on offense. And when I just look at these two teams, Washington beat them at home earlier in the year pretty convincingly. The Eagles did not have an offensive touchdown that game. They kicked 2 field goals. It was a kick return by Wendell Smallwood and a pick 6 by Malcolm Jenkins, again, the extra 14 points. And this Eagles offense hasn't looked, that much better since then. I know this game is at home for Philadelphia, and that is huge because, again, over the year, they've shown they have played much better. But just watching the last 2 games, I feel like they've lost all fight. They just look like they look lost, and with Kirk Cousins, the way he's played against Philadelphia, they've won 3 straight games. He's won 3 straight games against them, and the last time he played them, I believe he had 380 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. I don't know if he's going to have that big of a numbers, because this defense is much better than what Chip Kelly had it, but I do expect him to have a nice bounce-back game and be able to run the ball pretty effectively in a game where, again, with Carson Wentz, he made a mistake, and I think against this defense, knowing what weapons they have at their receiving core, I think it's going to be pretty easy for the Redskins to shut down this Eagles offense. And I think with that, knowing what the Redskins have to play for, and just, again, where the Eagles have just been so abysmal offensively, I think the Redskins get this victory. Just because, again, they're playing for something. They have a better quarterback. They're playing more efficiently. And I just have seen more out of the Redskins, and I've respected what they've done over the last several weeks compared to what I've seen Philadelphia do over the last several weeks, especially the last 2 games, the last one being at home. So that's why I like Washington -1 and Washington straight up. Next game, Cardinals at Dolphins. I'm going to congratulate wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald. He is now 3rd all-time in receptions. He's only now behind Tony Gonzalez and Jerry Rice for most all-time receptions in an NFL career, and now he's 10th all-time in receiving yards, passing Andre Johnson. And speaking of Johnson, I would like to congratulate David Johnson, who has now gone the first 12 games of the year with 100-plus scrimmage yards. And the only other Arizona Cardinal running back to do that to start the season was Edgerrin James back in 2005. And he has scored the 3rd most rushing touchdowns in franchise history, so he is having a stellar year, and he has become one of the top 10 running backs, arguably a top 5 running back this year with how consistent he's been. And for Arizona, for the first time in 4 games, Carson Palmer did not commit a turnover, which was huge. He threw for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Those are the kind of games Arizona needs in order to get victories, in order to get wins that they like to have. They had 2 big plays. It was the touchdown pass to J.J. Nelson and a 12-yard run from David Johnson on 4th and 1 from their 39 to seal the game for them. So congrats to them. They still have a very small chance of making the playoffs, but hey, anytime they win, it gets them a step closer. And they're playing a Miami team that just got absolutely ramrodded by the Baltimore Ravens. First time since scoring under double-digit points since week 4. That's the most points they've given on defense since week 3 of last year. They have 41 of the Buffalo Bills. Ryan Tannehill threw 3 picks. Going into the game during the 6-game winning streak, he'd only thrown 1. And this Miami team just, again, as soon as we scored, as soon as we got a turnover, and just as soon as we kept, gaining momentum, they had no answer for it. And, I'm going to take Arizona here. Just because, again, it's something where I kind of feel like it's kind of the same formula of Baltimore. Arizona, by far, has much better talent offensively than we do. And their defense is no joke. With guys like Pat P, with Jefferson, with Campbell, with Jones, they have a talented defense. And I know the game's in Miami, and going West Coast to East Coast is always a problem. And another little, against the grain thing here is Arizona, in their franchise history, has only won 1 game in Miami, ever. But I just look at Arizona and say this. I think that Arizona has a blueprint and a type of team that, can copy what Baltimore did. And I just think with Miami, they're going to be at home, and I think that loss, knowing what kind of team Arizona is, if Tannehill makes one mistake, that's going to, weigh heavily on them, and I just think that pressure is going to get to them in this kind of game. Arizona, they like pressure. They're used to, being under pressure, and in big moments, I'm pretty sure they're excited to be able to try to make a stretch run with this stretch of games. And I just, what I've seen out of Arizona is their highest of highs and just the way they look, I think they can, carry that to a Miami stadium that's, it's going to be warm weather. And I just think with Miami, I just think that Arizona defense will step up. They'll stop Ajayi pretty well, and Tannehill will make a mistake or two, which will get onto his head. And I think Carson Palmer and them get, a big win that they need to get to 500 and move on to their next game. Should be a good one because, again, these two teams, I wouldn't be surprised if Miami wins because Miami, they've been playing more consistent and they've been able to prove that they can close more games than Arizona has. But I'm going to go with Arizona here because they have more talent. They have a similar type of scheme and a similar type of defense to cause Ryan Tannehill fits. And if he makes a mistake or two or just doesn't, or the receivers can't make that many plays, I expect Carson Palmer, with his offense, to basically do what Joe Flacco did this past week in Baltimore. So that's why I like Arizona minus 2.5 and Arizona straight up. Next game, Chargers at Panthers. Cam Newton, he threw his first passing touchdown at 50-plus yards. In his career, he is 6 of 9 of throws on yards that traveled 50 or more yards in the air. And for Cam Newton, though, it was another pathetic performance. This is the first 3-game stretch in his career where he's completed under 50% of his passes or fewer. And now with this 8th loss, Carolina has ensured that in their franchise history they have never had back-to-back winning seasons. And the whole aspect of Cam Newton getting benched for a wardrobe violation, I don't really get that because to me, he wasn't going in a t-shirt, he wasn't going like in his pajamas or a swimsuit. He had a nice turtleneck on. I understand it's a rule, but if I was Ron Rivera, I would have just fined him because seeing Derek Anderson throw that interception just looked incredibly bad. The optics were bad, and it was just weird because we didn't know what was going on. Again, that didn't really change the outcome of the game because Seattle just rolled over Carolina 40-7. Carolina had never, that was the first time they had scored under double digits on points for the first time since 2014 against Seattle in Carolina, ironically. And I just think with Carolina, they've pretty much given up on hope. And this is a very disappointing year because for a 15-1 team to drop to 4-8, it doesn't feel good. It looks bad, and I think again it shows that maybe that Carolina and this team, they have a lot more work to do, and they're more of a one-year wonder than a consistent possible team that we all thought they could be. But fortunately for them, they're playing a San Diego team that just is about in the same boat as they are. San Diego, Phillip Rivers has thrown 10 interceptions in his last 5 games, and he's thrown 3 pick sixes in that span. And through that stretch, when he's thrown those pick sixes, the teams that he threw it to were able to gain the lead in those games. So it's been a rough stretch for him. I do want to congratulate, though, Melvin Gordon, who scored, I believe, his 10th rushing touchdown. He's the first player in NFL history after having a season where he scored no rushing touchdowns. He has 10-plus rushing touchdowns in the next year. So kudos to him there. And San Diego, for the 5th time this year, they blew a fourth-quarter lead. So they have a New York Giant kind of feel to them. And that's what the Chargers are, kind of like with the Giants last year. They have, all this talent, and they play really well. But kind of like with Arizona, kind of like with a couple other teams, when you put them in a spot to have to close a game, they can't do it. And Jameis Winston, in San Diego, was able to make big play after big play against the San Diego defense. I know Brandon Flowers was out, and that's big, but still, I think, they got a big interception on Jameis Winston early in the game. Casey Hayward, who got his 7th interception, which leads the league, he was making plays. And I just think, again, these two teams are kind of similar. You have 2, star quarterbacks, 2 decent running games, 2 big two wide receivers that can play decently, 2 Hall of Fame tight ends, offensive lines that have been banged up, but, are average at best, and defenses that secondaries aren't really that strong, but the front sevens have a couple core pieces. And in this game, I'm going to take San Diego just because I've seen the Carolina Panthers over the last several weeks, and there's just a part of me where I'm just not sold. Going off your last game, because again, Carolina and San Diego have also had similar seasons. They've had a lot of fourth-quarter games and a lot of decisions come by that close to being different. But from what I saw the last 2 games, I saw San Diego still put up a fight. I saw San Diego play a more complete game. The last time I saw Carolina on Sunday, they quit. I know they had injuries, but they just looked that bad. Tyler Lockett gets a 75-yard run. Thomas Rawls just makes one cut and just outruns the entire Panthers defense. I just see San Diego just showing more fight and being able to, make more plays against the Carolina team that's lost many more games, double the games at home they did double the games at home they did last year and over the last couple of years. And I just like Phillip Rivers and this offense and the San Diego team because they've just shown that, they've been able to close a couple more games Carolina has. And I just don't like Carolina's aura as I do San Diego's. So that's why I like San Diego plus three and San Diego straight up. Next game, Cincy at Cleveland. Congrats for Cincy. They got their 4th win, and it was the first time they had scored in their first 3 drives since 2014 of last year. And they scored a season-high 32 points. Cleveland has the longest losing streak in the NFL since the Raiders. From 2013 to 2014, I believe they lost 13 games themselves before they beat the Chiefs in week 12. This was fairly easy. Cincinnati, you know what? They've had a rough year, and they got a big confident victory. They get to have another big confident win over the winless Browns. And it's Cleveland. Cleveland has the second worst offense and second worst defense in the NFL. And I just think, again, even with no A.J. Green, even if he can come back this week, they have Brandon LaFell, they have Tyler Eifert, they have a running game, a better offensive line, and you don't. The Bengals just still have too much talent. Even though they have injured talent and they've lost talent, they have so much more talent than the Browns, it's not even funny. And it was fairly easy because it's under 7 points, it's under 5 points. I think Cincinnati easily, they've dominated the Browns over the years pretty handily, and I just think this game, with the Bengals trying to gain a little bit of confidence, getting back-to-back wins, feels pretty good at this point. So that's why I like Cincinnati minus 4.5 and Cincinnati straight up. Next game, Lions over Bears. The Bears-Niners game was pathetic. The Bears offense and the Niners offense did not complete a pass in the first quarter. I do want to congratulate the Bears, though. They held the Niners to a grand total of 6 passing yards from the starter. I think Wayne Garrett came in and threw 35, so if you want to add that was 41 total yards in the air. That is just pathetic. That's just awful. And then when you look at, the Bears, Jordan Howard, in the snow, 3 rushing touchdowns in a single game. He's the first Bears running back to do that since Forte against the Redskins in 2013. And I want to congratulate Matt Barkley, who got his first one as an NFL quarterback. Congratulations. He's had a long road. He's been in Arizona, Philadelphia, and now Chicago. He's been on the street. For him to get a victory, good for him. Your first one will always be your best, and he actually outplayed Kaepernick, even though, again, he only threw, I think, for less than 200 yards. But still, when you throw for 6 yards and 41, that's way better. But they're playing a Lions team that are on a consistent roll. Right now, I would tell you they are the 3rd best team in the NFL, surpassing the Giants, because even though they're very similar, I just like Stafford's playing better, and I just think this Lions team, their wins and the teams they played and the way they do it, it's not fluky. And they, compared to New York, and they're just better at they're better in some aspects than what the Giants can do. Matthew Stafford broke a franchise record with 13 straight completions to start a game. I think John Kitna had the record at 12. Detroit's clinched their 3rd non-losing season. This is how rare of a feat this is. They have clinched their 3rd non-losing season since 2001. So think about it. In a 15-year span, only 20% of the time of the last 15 seasons, the Lions have had a non-losing season. And I believe that's been 2011, 2014, and now 2016. Matthew Stafford, everybody's been saying he's an MVP candidate. I definitely could see why. He's completed 67.2% of his passes, for 3,332 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. And the Lions are going to try to avenge for what happened in Chicago in Week 4. They went up to Chicago and laid an absolute egg to Brian Hoyer. And I just think with that in their mind, they're going to go out there at home and prove that they, are a legitimate team. Because if they get swept by the Bears, you pretty much can put them back with everybody else. Because I think, everybody mostly, maybe besides San Fran and Minnesota, can beat the Bears. Should be a good game, though. It's a division game. These division games are always tough. And that's why I like, since it's over 7, I like Chicago plus 7.5. because I feel like, again, Barkley and this team, Matt Barkley's played pretty well. He had 10 drops against the Titans, which, could have propelled him to win there, and he just beat the Niners, so he's got a little bit of confidence in him. And his Bears team, you know what, they're going to play spoiler, and I think with John Fox as their head coach, they're not going to give up. But with the Lions, I think, without even playing, I'm going to go with them because they're the hot hand, and they're going to get redemption over a Bears team that got very lucky in the way they played. And I think Detroit's a much better team at this point than they were back then. So that's why I like Chicago plus 7.5, but Detroit straight up. Next game, Colts over Texans. Brock Osweiler. Here's a fun stat that maybe not that many people knew. Brock Osweiler threw for more passing yards than Aaron Rodgers did. Though, their defense gave up 89 and 98-yard drives. And for the Green Bay Packers, that was their longest drive on offense since 2009. And, when you look at the Texans, it's just bad. It's just anemic. DeAndre Hopkins, after having two spectacular years, this year he's having a down year. I don't really think it's his fault. It's the fact that he has throwing the football to him. Brock Osweiler, he has only had 58 receptions for 668 yards receiving. Andrew Luck's, and the Colts, unfortunately for them, their defense is pretty pathetic. 28th in total yards, 30th in points allowed. And the last time the Texans played them back, I believe, in week 5 or 6, they blew a 14-point lead with 5 minutes to go. So, again, the Houston Texans and Indianapolis Colts is an AFC South game, so these two teams know each other, and they have talent that can, match up to play a very tough game. But I'm going to take Indy here because Andrew Luck's lost only one game to Houston at home in his career. Or, well, not even that, I'm sorry. He's undefeated because I just remembered that game last year, Matt Hasselbeck started, and that was the game where Brandon Whedon started too. So Andrew Luck's never lost a game to the Texans at home in his career. And I just like where Indy's going. I just think I'm seeing Indy, they beat Tennessee. In the last 2 games Andrew Luck's played, they beat a decent Green Bay team, and they beat a Titan team that's decent too. And just looking at the Texans, I'll take this decent Colt team that, with Andrew Luck, has found a rhythm. Where with Brock Osweiler, it's, okay, Brock Osweiler can maybe make one play if he's lucky, but he's going to dink and dunk himself to death, and he will not provide any leadership or the big play that they need in order to win. And just with that, I'm just going to take Andrew Luck and the Colts again. Because I feel that Andrew Luck and the Colts, they've got some confidence to him with Andrew Luck. And I think with a win over the Jets, they'll get the 500 and realize that they're going to be playing for basically the whole division lead at this point. And I think getting that victory would be huge. I don't think they'll get it. So that's like Indianapolis minus 4.5, Indianapolis straight up. Next game, Vikings over Jags. The Minnesota defense held the Dallas Cowboys to their lowest points of the year, total yardage, the worst and the worst third down percentage. But the Vikings still were able to lose the game because of that pathetic offense led by Mr. Sam Bradford, or as I like to call him, Sam Badford. And it's an aspect where, again, Sam Bradford, I know he's had a lot to, he hasn't had a lot of work with. The offensive line was in rough shape. It still is. Laquan Treadwell has turned out to be an absolute disappointment his first year because apparently he's not even good enough to get on the field. They don't have Adrian Peterson. Kyle Rudolph was banged up. Stephon Diggs was hobbling. But still, when you're on 3rd and 10, you throw the ball 3 or 4 yards, like you did in some of those plays. That's not going to get you victories. And I just feel again where Minnesota, they've lost 6 of their last 7. I think they're not going to make the playoffs just because, again, the Vikings defense has done its job. You look at the game against Washington, second half, only 4 field goals. The game against the Lions, only 1 offensive touchdown. The game against the Cowboys, only they only allowed 17 points. This defense has played up to its potential and up to the level we have seen this defense play the whole year. And this offense led by Badford has just not pulled its weight. And it's showing where even though Teddy Bridgewater may not have been able to do the same thing, there's just a part of his confidence in the way he can run, which could, be an extension that they needed to win these close games. But this week, they're done playing the, decent competition in the NFL. They're playing the Jags. One of the worst teams in the league. The Jags were held to their fewest points on offense this year. And actually, I do want to say this, Blake Bortles has thrown the most pick sixes through the first 3 seasons in NFL history to start a career. And actually, here is the hilarious stat of the day. he has thrown more pick sixes than he has actual career wins. He's thrown 11 pick sixes in his career. He has 10 career wins. And 6 times this year, the Jags' offense has committed a turnover. The Vikings' defense is one of the best defenses in causing turnovers, and they're one of the best in turning those turnovers into touchdowns, which they need with this offense to give them a cushion to play, the way they want to play football. Jacksonville is 1-4 against the Vikings all time, and I just think, again, the Jaguars' offense, they're playing one of the best ball-hawking defenses, and Sam Bradford should be able to do enough for this Vikings defense. If the Vikings score 13, I can expect the Jags to score 10 or under. And I think that's the kind of game it's going to be. And I think, again, Minnesota just has a more competent quarterback. They have a much better defense to hang their hat on, and I just trust Bradford to be the efficient Bradford enough to win a close game against a Jacksonville team that at this point, if they can spoil anything, they'll be excited. So that's like Minnesota -3 and Minnesota straight up. Next game, Jets over Niners. Easy. I saw the Niners yesterday. That's it. The New York Jets, even at their worst, and I know the Jets have been pretty awful this year. The Jets at their worst right now could beat the Niners. You could put Christian Hackenberg back there. I'd take him over the Niners. That's it. The New York Jets are not the San Francisco 49ers. That's what I'm taking. Simple as that. So that's what I'm taking, the Jets over the Niners. The Falcons over the Rams. Again, another fairly easy game. When you look at Atlanta, they're inconsistent. In the game against Kansas City, they had every statistical category in their favor, but they still couldn't find a way to beat them. For Atlanta, again, I think they're on that borderline contender-pretender status. They have shown moments where they can put up points. They had wins over Denver. They should have beaten Seattle. They beat the Oakland Raiders. But at the same time, they've lost games to Tampa. Well, they lost a game to Tampa. They lost a game to San Diego. They've lost a game to Philadelphia. They've lost a game against Kansas City. And just every week, you don't really know what Atlanta team's going to show up. And Atlanta just seems like they always shoot themselves in the foot. That they can't, at the end, find a way to close games, and they'll just lose way in the most bizarre ways. And that, to me, makes that kind of pretender status. Because right now, Atlanta should, be a better team. They should have beaten San Diego. They should have beaten Kansas City. They should have beaten Philadelphia, and they should have beaten Seattle. Even though, again, that was on the call. But, fortunately this week for Atlanta, they're playing the anemic LA Rams, who gave Jeff Fisher a 2-year extension. I don't know why, but it's probably because, again, Kevin Demoff, the COO of the Rams, his father, Mark Demoff, is Jeff Fisher's agent. So, with that family connection, Kevin can't think of anything bad to say about Jeff, and that's why I believe he got the 2-year extension. Jeff didn't deserve, because you have 5 straight losing seasons, or 5 straight non-winning seasons. I don't care how patient you are, that's too much time. I think even the most patient people would say, okay, at this point, we need to see improvement. But I'm taking the Atlanta Falcons here easily, because Atlanta has the number one. Atlanta has the best offense in terms of points per game. They're playing the offense that scores the fewest points per game. And in over half their games this year, the LA Rams offense has scored 1 touchdown or less. And I feel bad for all those LA Rams players and teams, or for like Jared Goff, Gurley, because those 2 guys I think are better than what they are. But being in that system that's just so generic, so basic, not really exciting, it's dull, you really can't judge often, especially this year. So, also the Rams have lost 5 of the last 6 against the Falcons. It's easy. Atlanta has an offense that can torch the Rams. The Rams offense, even though they played a much better matchup, they can't torch the Falcons defense. And the Falcons defense will gain some confidence, because what I saw from the Patriots, the Pats looked like the 85 Bears when they played them yesterday in New England. So that's why I like Atlanta -5 and Atlanta straight up. Next game, Seahawks over Packers. For Jordy Nelson, congratulations to him. He joins Don Hudson and Sterling Sharp as the only Green Bay wide receivers with 3 seasons of 10-plus receiving touchdowns. And for Julius Peppers, he passed Michael Strahan for 5th all-time on the career sack list with 141.5. The next person that he's up going to try to beat is Chris Dolman. So kudos to him there. And like I said earlier, Aaron Rodgers played a much more efficient game. The running game was a little more effective. Chris DeMichael had a very solid game, and they found a running back for the rest of this year that can be effective and be a good enough running back to provide balance. And I think when you look at how Green Bay's played, they have some confidence. And they're playing a Seattle team on the road that is 2-3-1 on the road. It's not the most flattering stuff to look at with Seattle, but I do think that they should be able to win because I think when you look at how Green Bay's defense is, Russell Wilson should be able to exploit it. Seattle has the best primetime record since 2012. I believe they're like 18-3-1. Even though they suffered a huge loss with the loss of Earl Thomas. And since 2010, the only defensive back that's played more snaps than Earl Thomas is Brandon Carr of the Dallas Cowboys and of Kansas City. Though their offense had a spectacular day, they had a season-high in total yards and rushing yards. Tyler Lockett only had 3 carries for 46 yards entering the game. He had a 75-yard run on one play, which was a game-breaking touchdown. And this is going to be a huge feat for Seattle. The last time they won in Green Bay, you have to go all the way back to November 1st, 1999, when the last time Seattle went into Green Bay and won a game. Again, this is going to be really tough because, again, Green Bay's defense, I guess that's the difference for me, where Tampa, they've shown they had a defense. Arizona's had a defense. New Orleans, they were coming off the 5-quarter game. And I just think, again, when you look at the teams they've beaten on the road, they've beaten New England on the road. They beat the Jets on the road, and New England doesn't really have that much of a pass rush. And I don't think the Packers have that much of a pass rush, especially with the injuries they've been going through. And I think that's going to be the difference where Russell Wilson will be able to make throws against this very porous Green Bay secondary. He has enough weapons and enough motivation from last year, Week 2, when they beat him, to win this game. It should be fun. This is going to be a great game. But I'm taking Seattle here -2.5 because their defense should be able to hold Aaron Rodgers' receivers pretty well, even without Earl Thomas. And I think Russell Wilson will be able to put up a very good game against the very below-average Green Bay secondary. So that's why I like Seattle -2.5 and Seattle straight up. Cowboys over Giants. The Giants had 6 possessions within the Pittsburgh 30. They only scored 1 touchdown. They have the second worst running attack in the NFL. And when you look at Dallas, here is a great stat. They're 5th in terms of scoring offense and 5th in terms of scoring defense. Though they give up the 4th most passing yards, they also give the 2nd fewest rushing yards. So I think they'll be able to essentially focus on the passing game. And just with the Giants, this is always kind of the Giants' MO. As soon as you get them, it takes one loss to snowball into something. And with games against Philadelphia, Washington, and now with the Lions, I could possibly see this Giants team going on a streak where they're 8-4. They're going to end up 9-7 because they're going to lose 4 of their last 5, or I'm sorry, 3 of their last 4 to put them at 9-7. So we'll see. I'm going to take Dallas here. 10-day break, more consistent team, can run the ball better, and this is not Dak Prescott's first start, and I feel confident that they should be able to win that one. So that's like Dallas -3 and Dallas straight up. And Patriots over Ravens. I don't expect our offense to put up 38 points. Joe Flacco threw for 4 touchdowns, first time since Week 4 of 2014. Tucker's 8-8 from 50-plus yard field goals, so that would be a big help. But this is just New England and Tom Brady. 201 career wins, most all time. He's completed 23 passes to wide receivers. They have a better running attack, and I just think, again, New England just the better overall team, and I think their offense will just provide enough of a spark to win. Even though I'm going to take the Ravens +8 because I think this game will be a one-score game, just mostly like Baltimore games have been over the last 2 years. So those are my thoughts and picks for this week. Like, comment, rate, subscribe. Good luck to all fantasy players, other prognosticators, players, coaches, and teams. And until next week, this is Matt the NFL Fanatic signing off. Until then, so long.